Donc on a l'honneur aujourd'hui d'accueillir DJ Spinna. C'est vraiment un réel honneur et je tiens tout d'abord à remercier Madafi de l'association Graine de Funk qui nous a permis de pouvoir accueillir aujourd'hui DJ Spinna. Merci beaucoup. C'est pas souvent qu'on a des opportunités de recevoir des gens de ce calibre. Je suis particulièrement content de le recevoir aujourd'hui. DJ Spinna, je pense que si vous êtes là, la plupart d'entre vous, vous le connaissez. DJ beatmaker new-yorkais qui a bossé avec les plus grands, Stevie Wonder, Prince. Cette masterclass va être composée de DJ Spinna qui va un peu mixer. Et ensuite, il y aura des questions-réponses, il va parler un peu de sa vie. Donc, je vous remercie de faire un tonnerre d'applaudissements pour DJ Spinna.
I'm guessing that digging was the beginning. Digging for vinyl, beginning to create a record collection. Is that where it started?
Yeah, kind of, but I think I should take it back maybe a little bit before digging.
Okay.
Because the collection really started with my father's music, my father's records in my house as a kid. So I really started listening to music and playing vinyl and playing records since I was like 1, 2 years old.
What did your father have in his collection?
Wow, it was very mixed. It was a big variety. But first of all, my family, my parents and extended family members are from Central America, from Panama. So that's a Spanish-speaking country and also Caribbean influenced people live there, and I grew up listening to everything from Afro-Cuban to Caribbean music, reggae, calypso, soca, that kind of thing, and a lot of soul music and funk, of course, like the beginnings of it, so, Motown, Aretha Franklin, James Brown, Marvin Gaye, Stevie Wonder, Michael Jackson, etc., etc., but it was eclectic. I was influenced from the 70s, but then when the 80s kicked in, I started getting into new wave, pop, like a lot of British, the British invasion music that was happening in the late 70s, early 80s, like, Tom Tom Club and David Bowie, that kind of stuff. And then electronic music. So it pretty much ran, a large gamut of music. It was crazy.
How big was the hip hop influence in your life?
It's pretty big. I mean, hip hop really is youthful expression, it's youthful culture. Before there was a music industry, it's something that started in the streets. A lot of, basically the school system in the US took the instruments out. Like they canceled a lot of the music programs, such as the one that exists in the school, and a lot of the inner city youths had to find a way to express themselves. So one of the ways we did it was by use of turntables. So the first element of hip hop is really the DJ before everything. And then the MC, the graffiti is part of it, breakdancing is part of it. But we used turntables as the music provided on 2 turntables was basically the backing band.
It was your instrument.
It was our instrument. I was inspired by DJs in my neighborhood, DJs at local parties, block parties, basement parties, in people's homes. I've always wanted to be a DJ as long as I can remember. I was actually also inspired by disco DJs as well because, the whole art form of mixing and putting records together and making that seamless mix. If it wasn't for disco, I don't think we would have hip hop to a degree as a musical foundation, especially because a lot of the music that was being made in the early hip hop in the late 70s, early 80s was disco influenced. A lot of it was live bands playing the current disco record of the time and rappers rapping on top of the live musicians. So that all played a part in it, of me wanting to become a DJ. I played almost every weekend. That was like my job, actually. And a lot of students had regular student jobs, but my job was DJing. And I actually paid my way through college. And I had to take out loans. And after I graduated and I got into the music business, I never got a regular job, believe it or not. And I paid off my student loans like the year after I left school. I had a little box, a little radio, portable box, and I would record to cassette so many DJ mixes and study them. Like literally record them. If they came on like midday, like a midday lunchtime mix, record, study them, buy the records, practice. And that's how, that's how I learned. Like I learned technique from really listening. And when I was of age to go to clubs, that was my other way of studying. Like I studied hard, this is not something I just practiced. I had to like witness it for myself. And as a kid, I used to roller skate a little bit too. So there's a whole genre of music, subculture, subgenre of music that you can say are considered like roller skating classics. And in my neighborhood, there was a popular roller skating rink called Empire Roller Skating Rink. It's now closed, but as a kid, me and my friends and family used to go there quite regularly, and there was a live DJ mixing there. And that DJ, one of the DJs there actually used to play on the radio and became a popular disco like remixer. He remixed some really popular classic disco records. And he's from Brooklyn, but a lot of his early days were at this specific roller skating rink. So I had really great opportunities to learn from pioneers, either on radio or also in my neighborhood. Another thing I want to mention is in New York City, well, I can't say, just call it street, but it's in New York City, 70s era. Another thing that was really popular were block parties, where you had like, on every other block, you had DJ crews, and they would hook up these huge sound systems and play for the entire block. And on my particular block, there was a crew called the Laser Rock crew. Some of them were breakdancers, some of them were graffiti writers, and some of them were DJs. But some of the guys lived on my block, and I was the little kid, like the 10-year-old kid, watching everything, just standing there, just, wow, just amazed. And as it turns out, and let me know if I'm talking too much, but as it turns out, when they stopped DJing, one of the guys that I'm still friends with till this day gave me like crates of records that he used to play with and said, here, take them, and you deserve it, take them.
Because you were studying so hard.
Yes, but at this point, I was already working. He gave me the records like, I think right before I went away to college, which was in 1989 or so. So I took those records with me to school. And what's also funny, I didn't mention this before, but my father never really understood my love for music. Like, although he loved music, he never saw me as someone, as his son, to like pursue it professionally. It was all about getting a regular job, and he actually wished that I was into sports because he used to play baseball, and I never really got into it. And even like before he passed away, I know he was proud of me, but it was really strange, like him knowing that I was able to take this music thing and start a family, buy a house, have a career. He wasn't a man of many words, but I know that he was proud, and he probably wondered how the hell did I do it? Because it's not very typical for a black kid in America to make it. out of New York for one, out of their block, but then to travel the world and have a life, you know. But I do credit him for like starting me. It was actually him, and I have an uncle as well that had a really big collection as well, his brother, his younger brother. But yeah, again, it's like, it was all around me. It was inevitable, I think, that this was what I was gonna do. I didn't even go to college for it. Like, I didn't study music in college. I was undecided for a long time, and I ended up majoring in liberal arts, which is cool, but it's almost like it was destiny. Like, as soon as I graduated, I said, I'm not getting a job, I'm gonna just do music. I had to do it. Let's just say this, like, I go to Japan a lot. I've been going to Japan every year since 2000. Since 2000, I do tours in Japan. And this is gonna sound crazy to many of you, but the longest DJ set I've ever played, 16 hours. 16 hours. And I know DJs that have played longer than that in Japan. Because they have an appreciation for the music. You know, it's just a totally different thing. But house music has helped me tremendously. Like, even when I'm doing a straight hip hop set, there's a science to how you program music. And I always look at it as a performance. If you're in a band, if you're a musician, or a singer, and you're providing a service to your audience, you know, you have to program your set. You have to know like what songs are gonna put people in a certain mood. A lot of people want to end their sets on a high note. They may start off slow, or they might start off with a bang, and then in the middle of their set they may bring it down. It works the same way for DJ. By 1996, after being rejected and getting really close to getting signed to major labels, decided to go independent and put out records myself. Under my Beyond Real label and with my group Gin Masters, and we pressed up records, and then I started producing all these other great underground hip hop artists of the era, like J Live, Polyrhythmatics, worked with Mos Def, who's one of the legends that I can mention. Pharoah Monch is another legend I can mention. Eminem is another legend I can mention before he actually blew up. And then once I moved on, but once I started getting into other genres, wow, I mean, the biggest one would be Stevie Wonder. Donald Byrd, Betty Carter, wow.
So a lot of jazz.
A lot of jazz. Al Jarreau. One of my favorite singers of all time that I got a chance to work with directly in the studio, in my home studio, was India Davenport from Brand New Heavies. One of the people I didn't work with directly that I got a request from, this is one of my regrets in life. I was cool with Jay Dilla, James Yancey, and he called me and left a message on my voicemail years ago, requesting me to produce for his album, to do a track for his album. And I was a little intimidated. I didn't understand it. I thought, you know, I wasn't worthy, and I never did it. And the album got shelved. He had a record deal with Universal MCA at the time. And it didn't happen, but it came out years later, like maybe 10 years later. It got leaked. And when I found out who was on it, I was kicking myself. I was like, that was an opportunity I missed just from being scared. And I want to talk about being scared later. You can't be scared. You know, when you're pursuing music, you have to let it go. He was the guy, like, to me, I look at him as the Jimi Hendrix and the Miles Davis of hip hop. Like, he was just so forward thinking, and I studied him. And we talked a lot about samples and beats and stuff like that. My journey with Stevie Wonder begins in the form of a small tribute party in New York City. Not for Stevie Wonder's catalog, but for Songs in the Key of Life. It was just a small collective of us that had a small party in, what was that, I think 1999 in New York. And a few years later, decided to create what would become the Wonderful Party, which is a party that's dedicated to all of Stevie Wonder's catalog. And that includes music that he produced, music, songs that he wrote for other artists, people that have covered his music, remixes of his music, edits of his music, hip-hop records that sampled his music across all genres. So I'm playing Latin, I'm playing Afro-Cuban, Latin, reggae, versions, house versions, whatever, like just anything that has anything to do with Stevie. He found out about it like a year later. So it started in 2001. In 2002, he heard about it. And the first time I ever spoke to him on the phone, Edward Birdsong, who's another kind of legendary producer, songwriter who used to work with Stevie, came to the party when it was finished. It was like 4 o'clock in the morning. And I'm guessing that Stevie was in New York but didn't come. He probably sent Edwin. So Edwin comes and I meet him and he's like, Stevie Wonder wants to talk to you. And I'm like, oh. All right, so he calls him, I speak to him, and he says hello. And at the time, I used to do this party with Barbito, who was like my DJ partner for a long, like maybe 5 or 6 years. And Barbito and I did a mixtape, like a mix CD, called Wonder Wrote It. So the music on the Wonder Wrote It mix, a lot of that is what we played in the party. So Stevie heard about the mix, and I was actually nervous about the mix because it wasn't an official mix CD, it was like underground. So we didn't license anything, it was just like something we did, and we sold it just to basically, hype up the party, and it had a cult following, it did really well. So when he said, I want to check out the CD that you did. And I think I had given it to Edward Birdsong, and to this day I'm not even sure if Stevie ever heard it, but I was really nervous about it. Fast forward, that was 2002, 2004, my wife and I, we went to the Apollo Theater and we met him. I met him backstage for the first time. I was nervous, it was crazy. The next thing that happens, my encounter with him, I believe that was maybe a year later, after one of the parties, or closely, he had a concert. He had a concert at Madison Square Garden. So we strategically planned the Wonderful Party after the show, and he shows up for the first time. He comes to the party, and it was small. A lot of people left. It was a surprise. No one knew he was coming, but he came. He spoke to the crowd. There's footage of it. If you look on YouTube, you might find it somewhere. And that was the day that he told me, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate everything you've done for me, and I want you to keep doing it. But as a result of my relationship with him, I've been to his studio, I've been to his home, I've done shows with him. The most special one was at the United Nations in New York. He does an event called Message of Peace, I believe, Message of Peace, and he invited me to open up for him. So that was like, first of all, it's the United Nations, and then opening for him at an event like that. And that event was crazy because he had Sting, he had Ashford and Simpson, or Valerie Simpson, he had Estelle, he had, there were so many people, Freddie Jackson, Stephanie Mills. It was an all-star lineup, and I got to meet all of them. The party is worldwide, so it's not just New York. Obviously, I did it here on Friday, but I've done it all over the United States, plus Japan, plus Stockholm, Sweden. Did it in Amsterdam, did it in Japan a few times, London a few times. So it's a global thing.